Thanks everybody for joining today. My name is Jeffrey Sirio. I am with Consortium Networks, and I'm joined here with Will Howe from CrowdStrike, Ahmed Kira from Cribl, and Dustin Lee from Corelight. And welcome to the C4 webinar, where you can see more with C4. Right? Okay, just a little bit about Consortium before we get into it and the reason why we sort of brought this webinar together. Consortium is the next gen value added reseller, right? We are vendor agnostic. We're here to provide a concierge level of support to our clients, right? So we're here to work with the vendors with you and make sure that you have everything you need. We have some great benefits that we provide to you. We have metrics-driven decision making through metrics that matter, risk quantification. We have services. We have a concierge level of engagement where we'll work with the vendors for you and on your behalf. And we just have a lot of things going for us. So, all right. We're here today to talk about our C4 lab and what we have done to present to you guys a real world view into sort of a SOC workflow from the log source all the way to the SIM solution. Okay. So in order to do that, we built a lab environment to facilitate this. This lab is a fully functioning lab. It has a next-gen firewall, DMZ, user segments, server segments, and the whole nine. So what we did is we simulated attacks within there, and we set up Cribl worker nodes and Corelight sensors to capture telemetry and send that to the SIM solution. All right. We're doing that using Cribl Cloud. So Cribl, using the various products of Cribl, Cribl Edge, Cribl Stream, and Cribl Lake were the things we used most within this environment. We use that as the pipeline to both collect and store logs, but also send those logs over the pipeline to the next gen SIM. All right. So the next gen SIM is Next Gen SIM by CrowdStrike. Right. This is where we'll spend the majority of the webinar, getting some a hands-on view into how to investigate incidences. We left it as built-in as possible. So we leveraged built-in detections and machine learning logic that comes with CrowdStrike in order to leverage that in the investigation. And so the incidences and detections are all driven by that sort of engine. All right, great. Well, I will stop sharing now. And what I'll do now is I'll pass it over to Ahmed, who will show you the first part of our webinar here, the Cribl side.
Thank you, Jeff. Hey, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you. My name is Ahmed Kira, and I am a principal solutions engineer here at Cribl, and one of the first 100 goats at Cribl, as we have goats as our motto. So what is the idea of Cribl? Why does Cribl exist? It's about giving you choice, control, and flexibility of what to do with your security logs, where to send them, have what's called a data tiering strategy so that the important data can make it to the SIM, and all data, including the less important one, can go to an economical object storage where it becomes available to you to retrieve, to look at historically for things like investigations and so on. When the data does come through Cribl, there's a lot of capabilities here to help control that data, whether it's routing it to multiple places, as we're going to see in this demo, optimizing it, doing replays, even enriching it, various different scenarios here that the Cribl portfolio can be used for. And speaking of portfolio, Cribl started in 2018 with a flagship product called Cribl Stream, Cribl Lock Stream back then. And that is still our flagship product today, but today we are a multi-product company. So with Cribl Stream, we will process virtually any data, optimize it if necessary, and send it on to destinations such as CrowdStrike's Next-Gen SIEM. And then we've always been proponents of customers adopting neutral data lakes where the data can be stored economically for as long as you need it for compliance investigative purposes. That's where we have Cribl Lake over here as an option. You can write to your own object storage. You can write to data lake or Cribl Lake. The choice is yours. And so today we're going to focus here mainly at first on Stream, as well as another product that we've come out with over the past 3 years, and that's Cribl Edge. That would help you collect logs, collect metrics from your servers, from Kubernetes, and be able to route that to your SIEM, as well as other destinations as needed. So the demo that we're going to go over here, the Cribl portion, we're going to start with just an overview into the Cribl portal, show the data tiering, sending data to multiple places, and then get into 4 scenarios here in the next few minutes and how we're going to process logs from these 4 locations. And we're going to finish off with the Corelight one, as that is one of the main focuses here of this webinar. And then we'll come back later with a short continuation here of this demo. And so let's go into Cribl Cloud Portal. Cribl Cloud is available here as both a full SaaS solution as well as what we like to call a hybrid solution, where your control plane is in the cloud, but your data plane, where all of your logs actually traverse, would not necessarily be in the cloud, but it can be in your own data center, in your own cloud environments, so that you have separation of control from the actual data flow. In our case here, this is a hybrid cloud environment with Cribl Stream. So if we go to manage here under Cribl Stream, we will then see what we call our worker groups, which is where we can have our data collection distributed to different locations. Here we can see there's a hybrid worker group that is deployed in this lab environment where all the simulations are occurring. So let's dig into this hybrid worker group here and see what we are doing with that. Here is preloaded page for what's happening in the default hybrid worker group. We can see here, this is what we call our quick connect page, where we can see all of the data that we have coming in and where we're sending it. So we can see here, there's our Cribl Edge agent collecting on Linux, our Cribl Edge agent collecting on Windows, syslog data, including firewalls, and from Corelight over here, we have a specific listener for that. And if we look at all of these lines, let's take the Windows one, for example, here. There are 2 lines here, primarily. There's one with no icon on it going up to Cribl Lake. This is where we're sending full fidelity copy of the original logs for long-term storage. But going to Next-Gen SIEM, we can see here we've got these icons, and there's actually 2 icons over here. If we hover over this, there's this Windows one for Windows security logs, and then there's another one here for Windows DHCP. So let's dig into these 2 real quick, the DHCP data collection and processing, and the Windows security processing that we're doing here in this environment. For the DHCP one, there is a video out there on YouTube. So we will share the URL for this before the end of the session. But this video walks through the setup of Cribl Edge for doing the DHCP collection. But if we go over here and look at what we're doing, we are collecting this with Cribl Edge. So if we go to products and then go to Edge over here, fleets, you can see we have what we call fleets to help control what configuration gets pushed out where. In this case, we have a Windows one. So it's in a domain controllers one as well. So let's open that one up here in a new tab. And then from there, we can see under the collect tab, we are collecting DHCP logs with a file monitor and we are collecting the Windows event logs down over here with these two sources. All right, so now that we're collecting this data, what are we doing with it? This is where if we go into, let's go back over here to this view. If we go here to this line points to this pipeline called Cribl Edge Windows DHCP. So let's drill into that pipeline and see what it's doing. Here is that pipeline. And what we can see here, the beginning of these events have about 30 lines of header. This isn't data that needs to be sent to your SIEM. And if we keep scrolling down here, so we said about 30 lines, there is now around line 31 here is where we have actual DHCP logs that are starting up. So these are the logs that we want to send to the SIEM. And notice everything is crossed out at the beginning, and only when we scroll down here to line 31 do we actually see stuff that's not crossed out that'll make it to next-gen SIEM. And so with this pipeline, we are basically removing that noise and sending all the true DHCP logs onto next-gen SIEM. Okay, so great. That covers the DHCP. Let's now look at the Windows security logs. And so in a case like that, we have another pipeline over here. We have these preloaded to speed up this demonstration. But in this pipeline, we have a lookup. And in this lookup function over here, so pipelines consist of one or more of these functions that we are looking at right now. This lookup function is referencing a file over here of all of the event codes that are referenced in Next-Gen SIEM parser. So we are basically keeping only those event codes that Next-Gen SIEM cares about for its correlations. Everything else, we're only going to be sending that to Cribl Lake. All right. And so by doing this lookup, we now will basically control the outbound there. And if we load a Windows log sample over here, here's what these events look like coming in. And going out, we're dropping a marginal number, going from 300 down to 276. All right, so we've taken care of two pretty important data sources that need to go into the SIEM so you can do full detection and response. One of the other more important ones as well are your firewall logs. So let's go into the processing we're doing for that. Firewall logs are one of the most important ones to go into the SIEM. In this scenario, a lot of times what's called east-west traffic, which is me on a local domain, local network, talking to another user across the hallway, also on an internal network. And if the traffic is allowed, that's not always as necessary to send to a SIEM. So in this case, we are only sending that data to Cribl Lake. We are removing it from going to next-gen SIEM in this particular case. So some methods, ways here of that enable you to have control of what to do with your data. And then with Corelight, to round it out, with Corelight is a network detection response solution that looks at all of your network traffic. And in this case, it's actually also capturing the traffic that is going out to next-gen SIEM from the Cribl workers. It's capturing the data that's also going out to Cribl Lake from the Cribl workers and various other traffic. In this case here, this is known traffic, so we have put in a function to remove that known traffic because it's noise more or less here for going to the SIEM. So we're removing this, but again, we're sending it still to the Cribl Lake as an economical long-term storage solution instead. And the SIEM has all of the important data, right? To do all your detections, to give you the visibility that you need, that all of that data still needs to go there and to be stored for as long as you do your typical searches. And at the end of the day, here is where we can see the results of our efforts here by putting Cribl in the middle. We can see we have about 5 gigabytes of Corelight traffic that we are reducing to 3 just by removing the known addresses, and we're still mapping to the parsers on the other side within Next-Gen SIM. We are not impacting that at all. We want to maximize that. We want to map to all of the Next-Gen SIM parsers as much as possible. But you can see here from the other sources as well, we have some pretty nice optimizations of the data before it goes into Next-Gen SIM. So that, let me stop sharing so we can go on to the next part of this workflow.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahmed. So for the next part of our webinar, we will be shifting over to Will Howe so he can show you how to investigate and leverage detections within Next-Gen SIM. One quick note while he pulls up his stuff is that as one of the promotional videos to this, similar to the DHCP that Ahmed had shown, we did a little demo or tech tip on how to set up a connector between Cribl and Next-Gen SIM. So that's available for you, and we'll give you that link. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. Howe.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So what we are seeing here is the Falcon console, and as long as you have access to this console, you have access to Next-Gen SIM, 10 gigabyte per day with 7 days retention. So to receive data from Cribl, we actually have a connector dedicated to Cribl because it's a very useful tool in streamlining the amount of data that's coming into your Next-Gen SIM. As mentioned, is very useful to drop some of the noise that you don't need. And taking a look at some of the connectors here, we're going to pick the one that we are using today, which is going to be C4. And clicking on that, you see the configuration. So when you create a connector, one of the most important thing that you want to be able to attach to your connector is the parser. So we have a parser right here that I will go through just a little bit. And as you go through a process of creating a connector, you will get 2 pieces of information that you will need on the Cribl side in order to receive, to be able to send data to Next-Gen SIM. One of them is this URL. So data connectors on the Next-Gen SIM side act as a listener. And what it does is that Cribl will send data to a specific endpoint. In this case, that's the one that we created. And then on the Cribl side too, you will also need to have an API key. That's called a token, a password barrier. Depending on the tool you're using, it will have a different name. So in this case, this is an API key. Every time you create a connector, there will be an API key generated. And when you generate the API key, it will show up just once. And the moment you use that key and move away from the window, you will not be able to see it again, and you will have to regenerate that key. But today, we're not going to touch that. So we keep everything running. So we do have a specific connector that aligns with Cribl, and then we do have a parser that we use specifically with this demo that aligns with the data that's coming in this case, specifically Corelight. So every single connector has a corresponding data source. And most of the time, it is specific to the data source. It is maintained either by us, CrowdStrike, or by the vendor. And every single parser will have a section like right here that gives you some context regarding the version, the CPS, which is the schema that we're actually adhering to, the vendor, and then what module and the version that we are using. If you'd like to learn more about what CPS is, you can go to our documentation here at library.humio.com. Once it loads, scroll down a little bit, and towards the lower portion of the left-hand side is you see a CrowdStrike parsing standard. Going through it, you will get more information what the standard is. It is something that we extended from ECS, so that way it's not a completely new schema that you have to learn from ground up. There is some basis that we are utilizing and that we are extending. So coming back here, what a parser does is to normalize the data so that it can be used for detection. So some of the pieces of information here at the very front is especially the categories are used for detection, and then to normalize the data too, so that it can be searched easier when you're looking through different vendors to look for a specific field name. So in our case, that's the parser we're using, and that's how we get data onto the platform. Once you're here, the next thing you probably want to look into is the detection. Most of these detection are actually generated by the machine learning that we have. And detection contains a variety of different sources, all grouped together with their various category. And the one we're working today is Corelight, and several events that comes at detection will be grouped together to form an incident. Very specifically, today we are looking at an incident that's specific to this demo that we have. It is about a chrono timeline walkthrough. And right now that detection is new. So as I click onto it, I get specific information that has been collected throughout the specific detection that tells me some context as to what's happening, and also specific CVE that might be related to. And one of the things I'll probably want to do is to be able to start looking at this detection to start my investigation. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is to come here and then probably hop onto my workbench. That is actually a collaboration tool that allows all the different security engineers or perhaps incident responders to work together on this tool itself. Since I opened this one, I'm the first one to be in it. One of the things I'm going to do very quickly is to come in and say, it's right now in progress. So that status tells everyone that is working on this tool right now that that this specific incident is currently in progress. So somebody's looking at it, and somebody has started the investigation. So we can see a few things that's happening here, but being just an analyst, I'm not really a responder. I don't know too much into the specific of these events that are happening. So I know that's this remote services tool, and these are all remote services. It seems like that's being initiated by perhaps a user right here, and through a host here, and this seems to be a unmanaged host. So maybe this is a host that we should be concerned about. And another user that seems to be allocated to this attached to this particular incident is a SimSpace SiteLand user. So clicking on this allows me to perhaps look deeper into what this user is about. If I want to, I can go into identity protection, clicking that, and it gives me a bit more context into this specific user through identity. So another module that you can tack on with Next-Gen SIEM to allow you to get at the end of the day, get a better context as to what's happening. So over here, it seems like this user has a fairly high risk score, and I can probably find more about it clicking onto this. And this gives me a 8.4 out of 10, so that's pretty high. So why is this user of concern? So it seems like this user has some activities around suspicious domain, and then a lot of privileged access, and even one that says a golden ticket attack. So all this point to me, this user perhaps is somebody of concern, somebody I should really look deeper into. But I don't really do the investigation. So what I'm going to do is perhaps leave a note. In this case, I will leave a note to perhaps the incident responder. I'm going to say, hey, can you look into this user? Leave a note there. And then perhaps another thing I'm concerned about, I'll also leave another note here and say, perhaps to, let's say this time somebody different, right? And say it to a SOC manager and say, what do we know about this? So this is, at the end of the day, a collaboration tool. It allows us to look at all the notes that we may have passed along to each other, so that if somebody were to come in, you're not starting from scratch. You are able to hop in and jump onto an incident with some context as to what's happening. So I'm going to conclude my investigation here, and then I'm going to pass it to the incident responder and get deeper into the specific incident. Back to you, Jeff.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. So I thank you so much for demoing and showing us about Next-Gen SIM. What we're going to do next is I'm going to pass it over to Dustin so that he can tell you the sort of rich data set and telemetry that Corelight can provide and also further the investigation in Next-Gen SIM. So off to you, Dustin.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. And thanks, Will, as well. So I'm going to go in just to kind of continue the workflow that Will was working toward and let him know as the security analyst that I will look into it now. All right. And so what I'll do is I'll take this particular view. One of the things that I really enjoy about the workbench that Will was showing is the ability to kind of change the layout from the graph database to have it go across in sequential order or be a little bit more organic. I'm going to keep it here for now and kind of walk through some aspects of this. And this little guy right there, I'll actually show you what's going on with him in just a brief minute. As an incident responder, and when I actually used to respond to incidents in a past life, I would always like to walk through this in chronological order just to kind of get an idea of what's going on to a certain degree after I'd understood what's transpired so far as part of this particular incident. So if I move over here and look at the events timeline just to the right of Workbench, I can get a fairly clear picture of what's transpiring from starting at 1348 here when the network alert all the way down until we get into a little bit later in the timeline with some of the endpoint and identity alerts. So this is a pretty comprehensive incident that we can see based on numerous detections, beginning with network and really pivoting and bookending this incident with a bevy of identity-based alerts as well. I'm going to look into one of these network alerts real quick. And it'll be the same as what you saw in kind of the nodal view. This will just give me a little bit more information based off of a side pane that'll pop up, very similar to what you'll see in Workbench as well. So it's very seamless, and the way that you see a lot of the UI is going to be the same across Details, Workbench, Events Timeline, which is a really fortunate outcome. As I look at this, I see that there is it's a WMI based Windows enterprise management service execution method. And I'm looking right here at this. I'll actually zoom in a little bit so that we can see what I'm talking about. And this is the detection, the initial detection that Corelight saw on the network before anything triggered on a managed host or an endpoint. And what happened here, if we just kind of show all the details, we're going to get into some of the atomic attributes of this particular event. And this is really based on what Ahmed was talking about from a pipeline perspective and bringing it in to in the Next-Gen SIM via the parser that Will highlighted. So we're using our schema. It's being parsed over to Elastic Common Schema and CPS based off of the parser, the Corelight C4 parser that was shown there. And also, I think there was a question about there being one publicly available. Absolutely, I answered that. But what we had was we were working on a new one in flight for a version update. And we've been very pleased with the whole third-party integration part of the parser work that we've been working through with CrowdStrike. And it just goes to show that we can do this on the fly as we continue to build this out. So I've been extremely happy with that. As we look at this particular alert, I want to look and focus on some key indicators here. Not only the word indicator, but also the log level, which is critical, network community ID, and what this actually is this is something that we have put out to the community for the stitching together of known logs, like logs from your firewall, logs from CrowdStrike, any type of network log that you see. It's going to be inherent in Zeek as well. Zeek being one of the OpenNDR platforms under Corelight, as we are the custodians of that project. And we can use that network community ID to actually look across a litany of logs to understand what that particular connection would have looked like, or I guess would have presented itself as from a firewall, from CrowdStrike, and again, from Corelight as part of our process. Looking a little bit further into it, I get some IP information. I can see a 5 tuple of the source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, and the protocol. And I get a little bit more MITRE attack information as well. Not just the vendor message here, but also that this particular attack technique was going to be based under execution, right? So what was attempted was WMI, Windows Management Interface, execution for a command or some type of payload. We don't really know what the underlying process was here just yet. This is the initial event or alert that kind of tipped our hats and made us start looking at it. But this is a critical and key component of reducing dwell time and really getting into what's transpired on the wire. So if we go a little bit further down, we'll have another network indicator. This is a service control start service. What this means, and you're going to have the same degree of log fidelity here to be able to figure out and look at what's happening from a pure log and metadata attribute. Is this particular threat, which is also critical, is one that is typically based on a remote execution of services or services that are being started from a remote source over to another host. Think of it like if you're putting my former system administrator hat on, this would be like a PS exec, right? But PS exec is so ubiquitous that it's been kind of repurposed with a bunch of different attack tools to be able to start or begin services from hosts, that will attempt to begin these remotely. So this can be to run remote commands. This could be to spawn shells. This could be, a lot of other aspects that transpired from this. So now we have this, WMI remote execution. We have this, for commands and payload. Now we have this service start attempt that is going to run something on our managed host. And then we get into some of the other endpoints aspects of it. So just for the sake of this demo, this webinar, I'm going to pivot back to Workbench to highlight certain aspects of the rest of my demonstration. So I'm going to adjust the layout a little bit. Told you about this little guy over here. I'm going to move him back over because I'm going to talk about him in a second. Now, if we look at the graph diagram for this, what you'll see is we have these very same network detections. Now, how did I know they were network detections? Well, because I just covered them, right? And I've clearly been going through this at some point, maybe numerous times, maybe frantically even, to be able to present today. But what I could do very quickly and easily is just pop out the legend and look at the keys here for network indicators, right? And now I can get that color matching to actual item or entity matching and be able to look very quickly at what those are. And I wanted to bring, kind of remove stuff out of the equation just to focus on certain aspects. I could very quickly and easily do that in Next Gen SIM as well, which I think is phenomenal. So as we kind of work through this, I've covered the WMI portion of this notice and the service control start. And now this one right here, as kind of innocuous as it may seem, would be one of the larger aspects of our events from a network perspective. And from a MITRE attack framework and execution perspective, this is an OS credential access attempt. Better known as, in this particular instance, a DC sync attack. So you can tell here, and you can infer based on naming that we have a domain controller as part of this particular incident. And I was told one time, or excuse me, I was asked one time whenever I was handling an incident response event or an incident, I guess I could have that's redundant. There were some activities that were run for a silver ticket attempt or attack against we had a bunch of domain controllers, and based on what gets chosen, it selected one when this threat actor ran a silver ticket attempt. And so the executive of this particular organization asked me, Dustin, was it successful? And I said, well, based on the information that we have right now, I don't know if it was successful, but I do know that the correct commands were run. we were still going through patching enumeration to see what version that server was on, and it was really early on in this particular incident. But what this particular alert tells me is that there was an attempt at an endpoint, not the site DC, another endpoint, which you can probably see which one I'm talking about here as well, to emulate and sync with a domain controller by saying, hey, I am also a domain controller. So you saw that I selected this host. This host has a very clear indication that it is not managed by Falcon. This is an unmanaged host. And you may actually see it referenced twice on this particular graph. That's because we have a fully qualified domain name and a host name that have both been collected as part of this particular incident. And we can, kind of search in on that and look around and see. So what we're looking at here, based on what I've kind of painted this picture or Bob Ross for you, is that we have a remote command that was attempted. We have a service that was started or attempted to be started on the domain controller, something like PS exec, right? We have the DRS get NC changes or a DC sync style attack, which is it could be attributed to like running Mimikatz or Rubius or some other capability such as that. And various threat actors will use this as well to try to go ahead and steal all the keys to the kingdom in one fell swoop. And then we have our last one down here, which is it's a fairly long line, right? And it's sitting out here on an island because well, it doesn't have like the host or source and dest information, but it's a heuristic based attack or excuse me detection. So the other ones were very they were signature based detections based on the Zeek framework, which we also include Suricata as well. This one is highlighted for some of our Zeek detections using the MITRE Bazaar package or framework. This one in particular, though, counts the number of attempts against a file share, not any specific file share, but one of the three major file shares in a Windows environment, which would be $, IPC$ for inter-process communication, and admin $. So this says, hey, look, we detected a MITRE attack 10, T10 technique 1077 admin file share activity with 16 attempts in 5 minutes. That sounds strange. Yeah, no, it does. It absolutely does sound strange. So I want to go ahead and connect this and be able to visualize it by bringing a custom edge into it and say, you know what? I think that the target for this, I'm going to use T1077, the actual detection, as a target. I'm going to say the source of this is that particular unmanaged host. And then I'm going to say, you know what? The target is absolutely going to be our site DC. So what we attempted to do as part of this, if I could get my live demo correct here, there we go, is we're going to work this up as we work through the incident together. And when I say together, if you look over here in the top right, you can clearly see where we have multiple hands on deck being able to work through and push through this all at once. And now you may be thinking, well, okay, but I thought there was a lot of visibility in Corelight. I thought that there was just a sheer amount of metadata. Yes, there is, and it's still there. This abstracts a large part of that without losing fidelity. But if I wanted to look into any part of these particular logs to get additional information around it, all I would have to do is either say, hey, you know what? I want to, I'll go this way. I'm going to look at the event details. We'll pop open a new tab. We'll go back. And since this was run over 24 hours ago, I'll just put this in there now. And we can clearly and easily look at this entire event down to each key value portion of it. But I don't want to pop into another tab. I want to stay in this window. I like working where I am. Okay, well, all I have to do is you see this little search magnifying glass. I can very, very easily and quickly accomplish the same thing using a little different logic based on the event search. Look at that alert, look at additional information around that if I wanted to, even go into the advanced search, what you just saw, but now in this format, in this same console and window, and add those particular events to this incident as we work through it. So no need to even, we overuse this single pane of glass kind of idiom quite often. But what I want to say here is you can work on the incident, look at additional log content and your visibility, your view of choice, and be able to get down to very specific, critical, and atomic information in such a short period of time using CrowdStrike NG, using Corelight, bringing it in with Cribl, and having a full featured capability to see more. With that being said, I'm going to pass it back to Jeffrey. Thank you.
All right. Great. Thank you so much, Dustin. So, what I'll do now is I'm going to pass it back to Will. He's going to go back into the workflow and show you a few final touches to finish off the investigation. And he'll also show you how you can leverage the built-in Fusion SOAR and a workflow to quarantine the machine that is displaying all of this behavior, and therefore give you more time to do investigations and remediate your network. So off to you, Will.
All right, let me share my screen. So I'm just gonna get out and show that. So we are still working on this, and this is currently still in progress. And there's quite a bit of update I've done to it. And as mentioned, all of us are working here async, so we don't really have to be the same time zone or working at this at the same time. And the changes that have been made, but that's not all being seen here. At the same time, any notes that may have passed between the individuals who are working on this specific incident are all available here. So from what I've learned from what Dustin has been doing is that there is unmanaged host that there is something that could be of concern. And then there's this user, as mentioned earlier, there's somebody of concern too. So one of the things I can do now is that even though this user is part of a unmanaged host, I can come to my response action and then add the user to a watch list. So this way, within the identity module, we are now tracking the behavior of this user and then have them under a watch list. So if this user try to log into another managed host, we know about it, and then we could block any suspicious behavior that might originate from this specific user. So let's add that and say this could be an adversary, and just add them to watch list. And the other thing too, even though we have a managed host here, we do have site DC, which is something that we are managing and something we have a sensor on. So with that, there is a Fusion workflow. The Fusion workflow is our SOAR engine that allows you to use pre-built processes, in this case, a pre-built process to actually quarantine this host. So if you look at the available options here, this allows me to view the workflow, and this allows me to trigger it. So we're just going to take a quick look at what the workflow looks like. So this is Fusion engine, and basically what it does is that it is something that happens on demand, and query a device and then loop through everything that's in there and run through the whole process of quarantining a machine. In this case, we even have the option of allowing human to be interjected in the middle of a process to actually say, do we allow it to be quarantined? And workflow engine is something that's quite comprehensive. We have, when you create workflow, we have quite a few that is already available to you as part of the playbook. So you do not have to create anything from scratch. You are able to start from any of these available workflow and then extend it. If you have one that you have already used in the past, you are also able to upload that workflow here and continue using it here. Some of the useful components here is that you do have a simple dashboard that tells you the workflow that has happened, which one has completed, which one has failed, and then what are some of the on-demand ones. So that's the Fusion workflow. Getting back to here. So we already add the user to the watch list. We already try to quarantine the machine by clicking it here. The next thing we can do is, a lot of times towards the end of an investigation, we do have to be able to create a report for this particular incident. And that is typically something that take perhaps a few days with me or with somebody like Jeff, a SOC manager, who needs to coordinate with everybody to get their notes. Well, there is a feature within here called Investigate with Charlotte AI. And this allows you to create a report with just a single click. So this will run anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. It will create the whole report for you, giving you a summary of the incident that's happened here, including all the activities that's been completed. On top of that, if there are any hosts, any user, or any events that we may have missed as part of our investigation, Charlotte will actually generate a suggestion, and that list of such suggestion can be added to the workbench for you, and then be added to the summary of this report, so that it will create a comprehensive report for you, and then you can hand it up to somebody who is a stakeholder. Just bear in mind, this is a very specific feature of Investigate with Charlotte. It is not access to Charlotte itself. To access to Charlotte itself, you have to come here, but this is a very specific feature for Charlotte. The last thing I'm going to cover is that if at any point in time you feel like some of the work being done here that might not be correct and you need to roll back some of the work here, you can go to Workbench and then go to that icon, History, and from here, you do have the option of seeing all the changes that are being done. And if you want to, you can actually roll back to any to roll back and restore to a previous state. So as shown here, this was restored to an initial state. But whatever happens, whatever you change here, everything will be recorded in the timeline, and you will still have a history, accurate history of everything that has happened. So that's the workbench, and that's how NextGen SIM allows all the different party to work on an incident asynchronously, and be able to allow you to have tools to monitor all the detection incidents that's happening, and then be able to tie them together by allowing you to collaborate with perhaps an engineer like Ahmed, who knows how to get the data in and how to actually work with the data. Somebody like Dustin, who is a responder, who knows all these detail that's in that to each of the different incident. And me being an analyst, all I know is how the overall view of what's happening, and then at the same time also be able to look at some of the detections here and work through it. And that's what NextGen SIM is trying to do, is one UI, one interface that allows you to tie all these individuals together and collaborate effectively. And I'm going to pass that back to Jeff.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Will. Okay. So I hope everybody found that informative. As you can see, NextGen SIM is very rich and verbose, and it has a lot of features that can be used. The questions were great. A couple of them. Actually, one in particular that I really liked was asking about the Workbench workflow and how it can replace sort of their current way of doing things. They currently use a live document, right? It can do that, and it's really good at doing that. That's the main purpose. You can sit in there, you can keep your notes, and as long as you keep your notes and you collaborate within that tool, you can then use Charlotte AI to do the tedious part of generating that report for you. So that's a great advantage to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass it to Ahmed so that he can show you a little bit about Cribl Lake and how it can be used to search archived data.
Thank you, Jeff. So yeah, to finish this out, NextGen SIM is going to have all of your data. You can do investigations in there. But what happens a year later, 2 years later, when now you need some of these logs for audit compliance purposes? If we go into our demo earlier, recall we are sending to NextGen SIM all the actionable data, and we're writing full fidelity everything out to Cribl Lake. And so now to look at that data in Cribl Lake, and it could be Cribl Lake, it could be your own S3 bucket, could be Azure Blob Storage, your choice. So Cribl is all about giving you choice. let's take a look at what that data looks like. So if we go to our main portal page, Cribl search is right here. We click on explore, and we can see all of our data sets over here where we've written data from Cribl Stream into Cribl Lake. So here's a Corelight one. So if we go ahead, click on this, and then we can now say we have an investigation or a compliance from a year and a half ago, let's say 2 years ago. You have that data in your economical storage. So let's go ahead and paste a date time frame here from the past, or let's go ahead and just do something like date range and start at the beginning of the year here, where we have data in here. Click OK for January 1st, and then let's go say to February or March. And over here, we can at least just validate the data is there. Go ahead, search. And then so now this is how we can fulfill audits, compliances by looking through the history here of data that might have aged out of NextGen SIM and look at our archive and search that data. So with that, let's give it back to Jeff.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahmed. So I hope you guys found that very educational. One of the main reasons why we put on this webinar was to show you how well these products work together, and also that we as Consortium can help you through your journey of getting these products. A lot of the questions had to do around like how these functions are used, how we can get this, how this could be used to kind of replace our current infrastructure. All those questions can be answered through us. As you can see, we have a great relationship with all of these vendors, and we can just add that extra level of support and that concierge touch to you guys. All right. So, what I'll do now is I will open up the floor to any questions anybody may have. We got a good 10 minutes left in the session for you guys to just ask away. So feel free to come off of mute, or if you're more comfortable doing it in Q&A, then I'll read your question out loud and we'll answer it. So feel free to use this time as sort of a Q&A session. Anybody want to go first? No? A lot of shrinking violets here. All right. Well, I guess maybe I'll kick it off. I'll send a question towards Dustin. Um, Dustin, you mentioned a lot of the Suricata rules and telemetry. Could you go into a little bit of detail as to sort of how that's imported and what sort of role it plays?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have a multivariate approach to network traffic, right? From a Zeek and Suricata perspective, both in the IT space and EOT space. And so what we do is provide a port independent protocol analysis. So if it's RFC compliant traffic, then we will absolutely parse that. Think about your HTTP traffic, your TLS traffic, your SMB traffic, things of that nature. And so we create a connection log or a con log at the initial inception of a connection, whether it be TCP or UDP. And then we will follow that particular connection for a determined amount of time, whether it be the closing of the connection or a timeout. And based off of that, we will create additional protocol logs from that connection that are all stitched together based off of a unique identifier. And so you get a lot of additional information and a lot of valuable visibility purely based off of like one key indicator that is across all of those logs. And it's going to be in Suricata logs as well. So if you want to go threat hunting, like we threat hunt at the Black Hat NOC as the network detection and response provider for the entire event, so the conferences, we will use that to go look for anomalistic activities or things that you shouldn't be seeing on the network, right? Because no one's coming to Black Hat and allowing you to put an endpoint agent on their device. So we're able to kind of have a network visibility aspect there, working with our partners. And it just allows a lot of network performance monitoring, threat detection, signature-based detection, and even based off of some of our models that we have running on our higher end sensors, and then in our SaaS platform, we can do ML detection as well. So we try to get down to the real meat of the connection, to be very verbose in explaining what that is, and then using new technology, actually using just the legacy stuff as well. Like, we're able to use that those like best of breed technologies or best of breed thought processes, and come up with new and interesting detections that then we can still feed into other platforms, and be it parity or work toward a better solution to see more.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, as you can see, very rich tool. Definitely recommend. Does anybody have any questions they want to pop in before I just kind of go to one of the questions that happened during the webinar? We can talk a little bit further on that. Okay. Well, one of the questions in the webinar that I see that I think warrants like maybe talking a little bit further on is we have an individual currently using a different SIM solution. All right. It's a bigger and bigger drain on their budget. They wanted to know like if Next Gen SIM and Cribl combined, how that could help in that scenario, kind of reduce budget if it was the same and all of that. Will gave a good answer, and so did Ahmed. So I'm going to pass it to either Will or Ahmed if they want to give their piece and expand a little bit further on how Next Gen SIM and Cribl combined can save costs.
Yeah, we have many customers doing this. This is one of the key use cases for Cribl, to continue sending data to your existing SIM while you're evaluating a new one, such as this Next Gen SIM. In fact, I have 2 or 3 customers that picked Next Gen SIM this exact same way, and they may or may not be on this webinar. But it's a very popular way to do this, and it also gives you the flexibility to see what you want to send over, and focus in on that data as well. So we got great synergy between our 2 companies here to enable customers to get that value and save money, while at the same time, one of the things I like with the integration is the performance of Next Gen SIM can be even better. Right? Why? How? Because we're sending it the actionable data. So the performance of Next Gen SIM is better at the end of the day as well.
And the search speed is like milliseconds as opposed to minutes, if not hours, with Splunk. So I'll pass it to Will so he can elaborate a little bit further.
I'm just going to elaborate one small piece, because we do get this question quite a bit. And one of the challenges is that with other tools, if you do get a spike, usually you have to pay for that spike. The thing about Next Gen SIM is that we do a rolling average of 30 days. So we don't charge you for that spike, because the spike you might have for 2 to 3 days, that would be spread across the rolling 30 days, and it might average out to be nothing. So based on that, and based on how effective you can use Cribl to reduce the amount of data that perhaps reduce some of the noise, only send relevant data to Next Gen SIM. The combination of these two, that really allows you to realize some savings, especially when compared to most of these other tools out there.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Will. And I want to elaborate a little bit myself. One of the main things is a large data source for a lot of people is actually CrowdStrike first-party data. And if you have CrowdStrike in your ecosystem, you already know this. The best thing about Next Gen SIM, or one of the great things about Next Gen SIM, is that first-party data is free. You don't have to pay for FDR to get the data in there or anything like that. So that's an advantage and a plus. And also, in kind of the same vein as everything, one of the things that we can offer as Consortium is help you sort through your data and find data that is of detect value. So that data that needs to go into the SIM solution, and that data that's of forensic value, that data that can be put into Cribl Lake. And we can help you evaluate that and make that determination, and therefore lessen the cost that way by making your pipeline more efficient. All right, great. If Were there any other questions? Did anybody want to chime in? Oh, here we go. We have one from Kyle. As a next-gen SIM customer, does CrowdStream cap at the NG SIM license, or is it still capped at 10 gig a day regardless of the NG SIM cap? Do you want to take that, Will?
So CrowdStream is capped at 10 gigabyte per day for now, yes. And if you do purchase next-gen SIM, I think we are only capping the data that's coming from a CrowdStream itself. So if you have third-party data using other data connectors, those will not be capped.
Yes. So to reiterate, CrowdStream cap only applies to CrowdStream. You can still get data the traditional way using connectors, and like via API pulls or pushes or like syslog or heck or however you want to do it. Great. Let's see. Awesome. Were there any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining our humble little webinar. I hope it was educational and fun for you guys. So just remember, uh, we are C4. We have Consortium, CrowdStrike, Cribl, and Corelight. We are explosive, and we work great together. So remember, you can always see more with C4. Thanks, you guys.